that 3-pound organ between your ears can be your best friend or your worst enemy. Your brain evolved to make survival top priority, but it's picked up some bad habits since our cavewoman days. We used to have to worry about being eaten by wild animals when we went outside. Thankfully, you don't have to worry about that anymore, but the media, scary birth stories, and even past experiences keep your brain on high alert for danger. But the fact is that birth is safe for most healthy, well, full-term moms and babies. Your brain is an amazing organ, but there's a couple of functions it does particularly well that unfortunately can make your experience of pregnancy, birth and postpartum a lot more challenging than it needs to be. Number 1. Your brilliant brain can't tell the difference between what's real and something you're vividly imagining. As clever as your brain is, it can't tell the difference. So when you're imagining how awful labour is likely to be, your brain assumes it's happening right now. Just by thinking about labour in this way, your body and baby are being unnecessarily exposed to repeated jolts of adrenaline. GentleBirth helps you to think differently and intentionally exposes you and your baby to healthy, nurturing, feel-good hormones. Number 2. Next on the list is the negativity bias. Your brain automatically focuses on the scary what-ifs. Worst-case scenario is always the first go-to. Your brain always assumes the worst, because back in the days of living in caves, thinking positive could make you dinner for a hungry lion, and even though that was several 100,000 years ago, the brain doesn't realise that we now live in different times. But it's just trying to be helpful. Now, GentleBirth is not about naive Pollyanna thinking. We call it intelligent optimism. Awareness of this brain feature helps you to mindfully disengage from those anxiety-producing thoughts more easily. And next is mind wandering. It's estimated that our mind wanders about 50% of the time. Now, the problem isn't that it wanders, that's a normal function of the brain, but most of the time it's wandering off to stress town. It's replaying the argument you had with your sister, or projecting into the future and worrying about finances after your baby arrives. Have you noticed how your brain doesn't often wander to positive images of labour? And it's almost difficult to think about labour in a positive way, because if you're like most pregnant women, those connections in the brain just don't exist. Yet. If I asked you to list 3 things right now that you don't like about yourself, I bet that would come quite easily to you, as you've practiced those thoughts quite frequently throughout your life, so those brain connections are well established. Now, name 3 things you really like about yourself. And notice how that takes a little bit longer. It's not automatic. The reason those thoughts aren't automatic is because you haven't practiced the thoughts of appreciating yourself. So those neural pathways don't exist in the brain. You may have heard the saying, what fires together, wires together. So the more often you have a particular thought, whether it's positive or negative, it creates that neural pathway in the brain. Your daily mindfulness training with the GentleBirth app helps you to recognize sooner when your brain is on a negative train of thought to stress town. So once again, you get to intentionally change your mood, your physiology, and your baby's by changing your focus. So just to recap, when we combine these 3 normal functions of the brain, not being able to tell the difference between real and imagined threats, the negativity bias, and mind wandering, we end up with a highly anxious brain that keeps you locked into stressful thoughts and anxiety. You end up mentally rehearsing the kind of birth you don't want. And those stress hormones keep flowing to your body and baby instead of those healthy hormones of oxytocin. Fear and anxiety doesn't just make your pregnancy harder. Research suggests it's likely to impact your baby and make your labour more difficult too. So what's the answer? Retrain your brain. Your brain is highly plastic in pregnancy, and we can actually re-sculpt it with intentional activity such as mindfulness practices. So that means by following the short daily training recommendations in the GentleBirth app, we can easily create new and improved grooves in the brain and reduce fear, stress, and anxiety. You get to be the DJ, so your brain learns to play a different tune, one that inspires confidence, excitement, and resiliency, so you can get ready to rock your birth. Don't take my word for it. Go read the thousands of positive birth stories from moms who have already used the GentleBirth approach.